All right, today we're going to be reviewing graphing skills, and we're going to just use 2 and 3 for today. We're going to skip 1 altogether. And so we're using that extension that I had you add to your Google Chrome last week. So if you had issues installing that, or if you didn't do so, you need to make sure that you add that. And that was taken care of, I believe, last week, Wednesday. So if you look back at the homework from then. So a couple of things that you can do with Kami. First of all, you can use it kind of 2 different ways. You can use it just directly with a computer, or if you have the ability to, if you have like a tablet with a pen, that will allow you to write as well. And so it should work with Apple and Android as well. So if you don't have the ability to write on it with a pen, there's this text box option. So anywhere that you want to type something, you can click and type whatever you need to type. So this can, again, be used with other classes. You can change the font color, the size, things like that. And then for writing purposes, you can, the main one I was using and playing around with is drawing, but markup might be useful. There's like highlighters, things like that. So for an English perspective, that might be useful there. So I'm going to kind of show you how to use this as I work through a couple examples to set this up. So I'm actually going to use this box highlighter here. Right up here is the really important information on how to set this up. So I always get the question of what goes on my X and what goes on my Y. So your independent and dependent variables decide where those are going to go. So your independent variable is always on your horizontal or your X axis, and the dependent, again, that's what's responding because of it, goes on the Y. So for example, one of the assignments you worked on was talking about the beetles, and you identified that they were changing in that experiment the amount of food that the beetle received, and then what they were measuring as a response to that was the horn size and the size of the body. So I have a little acronym to help you keep track of what is what, and that's called dry mix. So you may or may not have had a teacher give this to you before. So dry mix stands for D is dependent, or responding, and that goes on your Y axis. The mixed part of it is manipulated, or independent, is always found on your X axis. And I can't get rid of this little dialog box there, so just ignore this right here. Okay? So dry mix, again, just helps you keep track of what is going to go on which axes. So again, what you are in control of in the experiment is always on the X, and what you are measuring because of that change is on the Y. So I'm going to go ahead and scroll down, and here's an example. And we have this farmer wants to know if there's a relationship between the amount of fertilizer in kilograms she uses to how tall her corn grows. So again, what is she in charge of? She can control how much fertilizer the plant receives. She can't control how tall the plant gets. And so that's the amount of fertilizer. And notice this is really important as well, is that she also includes what unit, because the whole purpose of this is ideally somebody may come along and replicate your experiment. So they want to be able to replicate it in the same way that you did, including units. So then we have here on the Y, what did she measure because of it? How tall the corn got in centimeters. Okay? So I'm going to set up example or graph 1 with you. And so it says that a ball is dropped from several distances above the floor in meters, and the height it bounces is then measured in centimeters. So you are controlling the distance from which it is dropped, and it tells you that you are measuring. So whatever's being measured is, again, going to be responding, or your dependent variable. So there's a few different ways that you can label these. It's not necessarily one set answer. So I'm going to label this as height dropped. So again, what I'm in control of is how far it was dropped from. And then the next thing is, what did we measure it in, and put that in parentheses, and you can abbreviate meters as M. And then we have here the bounce height, and I'm not going to turn my tablet here, so I'm just going to go ahead and just label this along here. So the bounce height is what is responding. And again, what did we measure that in? That is in centimeters. Okay, so you have a series of graphs that you're going to work through then, identifying what's independent and dependent essentially, and then labeling that on your graph. So if you're stuck on a particular example, or you're feeling a little bit stuck in general with this, again, reach out to me and we can set up a Google Meet and I will gladly help you. So that's what you're doing with skill 2. Skill 3, so if you want to pause this, work through skill 2 and come back to this is fine. Skill 3 is going to use a little bit of math, in that what it's going to do is show you how you figure out your interval. So you always, again, want to know what are you going to go up by, so you can set up a graph that utilizes the space to the best ability. So there's kind of 3 steps. So just like the previous skill, up here are the 3 steps, and it kind of breaks it down step by step by step on what to do. Again, I'm going to work through the example real quick to help you out. So what it tells you to do is you have to find your range, which you guys have done before, and so they already have that set up for you. So your range is, you need to know what is your largest value and your smallest value out of your set of data. So the largest value was 40 grams, and then our smallest set of data was 5 grams. To find the difference there, and this is a typo on this part, that really shouldn't say 35. I think they just got ahead of themselves and wrote in the answer here. But that should really be 40 minus 5. And so the range, the span in which your data lies, is over 35 intervals. So we are just transferring in step 2. We're figuring out, what do we count up by? Do you go by 1s? Do you go by 5s? Do you go by 10s? Those types of things. And this step helps you figure that out. So you take your range, which we just transferred from above. So this 35 goes here. Now it wants to know intervals. So intervals just means essentially how many boxes does your graph have. So it says here to assume that our graph has 10 intervals. So for all of these examples, your interval will be 10, because we're assuming the graph has 10. And then finally, you're going to round. So what you're going to do is you're going to take your range divided by 10. That gives you 3.5. That's telling you what to go up by. Now, sometimes your numbers get to be where it's not an easy number to go up by, which 3.5 isn't too bad. But again, we tend to like to go up by whole numbers. It makes plotting points a little bit easier. So you always round up. So 3.5 rounds up to 4, and that ensures that all of your data fits. So for example, let's just say my range was 31 instead. And let's say my intervals is still 10. When I do my division step, so 31 divided by 10, we know is going to be 3.1. Based on what you've been taught in math, with rounding, you would naturally want to round this to 3. So again, the issue here is we are determining what to count by. If you round down, you're going to end up losing part of your data. Not all of it will fit on your graph. So you always round up, even if the rounding rules doesn't make sense to do that. So just like the example here that we get 3.5 rounds to 4, you would still round this one to 4 as well. Again, what it does is it makes sure then all of your data fits. And then all you're going to do in these last steps is figure out what the scale is going up by, labeling the pieces there, and then you're going to basically do the whole thing, where you do all these steps to make your graph. So you're going to do it once for your distance, you're going to do it once for time. So you have 2 different sets of data to figure out and getting it onto your axes. So you're going to start with figuring out your range. You're going to figure out this. Now you have to count your boxes to figure out your intervals. You're going to do your rounding rule. So again, you always round up, and then you can go ahead and get it labeled You don't have to actually plot the points at this point. What I'm looking for is, can you figure out what your scale is? So again, I don't need a completed graph here. I just need your axes filled in. So again, you have two options here. You can use the drawing tool or you can use the text box. So let's say you don't have the ability to write and you want to type these in. So if I go back, I'm going to erase this stuff out. And you can just type this same information in. So you can do text box. This was drop height in meters. And then you can add another text box over here, which was bounce height. And that was in centimeters. So again, this allows you to quickly type things in, and then you can always kind of click and drag it to make it fit wherever you need it to. So again, this works really well, and you can add this and use it for other classes besides this. If you're having issues with Kami, if you're having issues with just how to do these skills, again, please reach out to me. I'm available from 8:30 to 3:30. We can talk via email, or if we need to set up a Google Meets, we can set up a Google Meets. And then the last thing is, I've listened to my videos and I know the audio is terrible. The microphone that's built into the school provided webcam is less than desirable. So Amazon is thankfully shipping me a better microphone. So hopefully the audio will be much better later in the week once that much better microphone shows up. So again, reach out if you have any questions.